Michael or Abby, I'll let you tell us when we should start. You want to wait just a couple more minutes, or you want to get started?
I'm scanning quick. Give me just one more minute.
Mm-hmm.
What was that, Becky? Sorry, I had a parent who was in the Google Meet link that I'm directing to the Zoom link.
So we'll start whenever you or Abby want to start. Abby's looking, scanning the participants a minute. You probably know a few who are planning, if they're here yet.
Okay. Yeah, let me give me 2 seconds and then we'll get this party started.
Mm-hmm. Great. You're welcome for this part to have your cameras off, or if you want to have them on, say hi to each other, you can do that too. If kids, are running around in the background, that's totally fine and expected, actually.
All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. It's 6:32. I just want to welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. As Becky said, totally understand as I hear somebody beyond the door. And those of you who remember our town hall meetings from the summer, the Debris House is alive at 6:30 in the evening. So I just want to welcome Becky Tubergen and Matt Cook from All Belong. They've been on this journey with us since 2017. If you remember reading from the email that we sent out a couple days ago. And we partnered with All Belong just as a response to trying to meet the needs of all of our learners, which is right there in our vision statement. And they've done a great job in consulting with us and providing professional development and many different resources, evaluations, trainings, all the sorts to help us become a more inclusive school community. So I'm going to turn it over to them in just a second. I'd like to start with a prayer. And this prayer comes from the Program for Inclusive Education down at the University of Notre Dame, who's also been one of our important partners in this journey. Mr. Rue and Mrs. Laponzi both went through the PI program and have come back with a wealth of knowledge that they've been able to share with the school community. So let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father of all that is good and holy, we ask that you bless us with your infinite love and mercy as we work with all students made in your image. Those students that read with grace and those that need grace to read. Those that lift others up and those that need to be lifted up. Those that embrace learning and those that need to be embraced to learn. Those that make us smile and those that need a smile. Grant us the knowledge, patience, and compassion to serve all students in your care, for they have your gifts to celebrate. We ask this in your name, in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Becky, they're all yours.
Excellent. Let me share my screen a minute. All right. So you should see PowerPoint there. And if you have comments, go ahead and write it in the chat. If you have questions, private message in the chat. You can private message Abby or Michael, and you can put questions there, and then we'll have time for a question and answer later on. So what this will look like is I'm going to talk for a little while. I have my phone here and my timer, so I will make sure that I don't go too long. But I'll talk for a little while, and then we're going to break off into some small groups just for some reflection and chat. And then we'll come back together for more question and answer. Okay. Let's see. And like I said, if oh yeah, be muted and yeah, that's good. So I'm Becky Tubergen, and I'm the Director of Educational Services at All Belong Center for Inclusive Education. thrilled to be here talking with parents. Talking with a full school community is valuable and important, and it shows the dedication that All Saints Academy has for building an inclusive school by even creating space and allowing this conversation. 6:30 is busy. It's busy time, and shows your dedication of logging in and being here. So thanks for also taking the risk. You know, we'd love to be in person, and someday we will be in person again. But hopefully you will find this a valuable hour and a half. 8 o'clock is when we'll be done. So All Belong Center for Inclusive Education, our mission is to come alongside faith-based schools and churches and to help them include individuals of all abilities and to support whole families. Our name puts our beliefs and values at the heart of our identity. It calls our attention to the implications of social justice, for dignity of each person of all abilities, and for the relationships that make up communities. And that's why it's such a great fit with All Saints Academy and All Belong, because those values are at the core of what we do. When I go and I speak, you know, usually I have a bunch of people in front of me, and I get different responses when I talk about how we're gonna be spending time talking about creating a community where all students can thrive and learn. All students who want to be part of a faith-based school can be here. And so I get the, yes, I'm all in. Get people, you know, given the high five, they're super excited. I get, I have questions about this. I'm here, not quite sure how it's going to work, but I'm here. And then I get the no eye contact. I'm just not gonna look around. This is uncomfortable. And I wanna tell you that there is not a wrong response. Inclusion is a journey. Everybody is at a different space. The fact that we're here together is number one, it's very important, but then also for each person who's here to think, well, where do I fit here? Where do I fit? Because in order for us to, you know, embrace a new mindset and grow, we really need to know where we fit. So think about that a minute. When I think about inclusion, I'm going to give a little background, okay? Over the years, the inclusion of children with disabilities in general education classroom and buildings has been limited to the point where families feel excluded from environments, including our faith communities. One family who we worked with tried 20 different schools each school year, 20 different Christian schools in the Bay Area, in California, within 1 hour of their home. Schools that the parents really thought, or mom thought, this is where I want my son to go. And it wasn't until Antonio's sophomore year where she found a school who would take Antonio, who has an intellectual disability. So 20 schools, she was persistent. She went every single year and she received the same answers. Today, when parents are frustrated, they don't just tell their friends about things. They often, they'll write blogs and they'll write about it. And I'm going to share with you a response from a parent who we work with their family also. Here is one from a family who moved to Grand Rapids a few years ago for an inclusive school. So this mom says, 2 hours after dropping him off to shadow for the day, the teacher called and informed me that this was not going to be a fit. He is just not able to focus or follow directions and is not interested in the activities I had planned for him. He's very sweet and inquisitive, but this is just not going to work. I sat in complete silence, trying to absorb her flat words. Did she just tell me that my son was not invited to attend the school we had been dreaming about for him? Did she just make a decision about his future based on 2 hours of knowing him? I hung up very abruptly and went to pick up my child. I wanted him out of her care and away from her prematurely formulated opinions of him. And I wept. And when I say that, it was a cry far different from any cry I have ever experienced. They were painful and angry and bewildered tears. I wanted to punch her in the face. I know it's not right, but this is raw. I wanted to tell her that she was missing out on an absolutely absurdly amazing little man, and that it would forever be her loss. Instead, I stood in the empty foyer in front of her, refusing to meet her eyes, and asked her to please go get my son so I could take him back to school. As he danced into the area where I was waiting, talking about his favorite toys and magic powers, I asked him to say thank you to Miss Nancy, explaining to him that his friends missed him and that we were going back to his school, his big public school, the school that would accept him. And that was several years ago, and Rylan is now in the Grand Rapids area in an inclusive school. And this is Rylan now.
Is there anything you wish other people understood?
Well, you see, I would tell that to not make fun of kids who make random acts, who they don't really mean to do it. They just do it.
What do you mean by random acts?
Like,
Oh, shoot. Sorry.
Is there anything you wish other people understood?
well, you see, I would tell that to not make fun of kids who make random acts, who they don't really mean to do it. They just do it.
What do you mean by random acts?
Like ticks. That wasn't an example. I just had a tick there.
Do you do that on purpose to demonstrate? When you have a tick, what does it feel like?
Like I have to let it out. It feels uncomfortable in that thing, and then when I tick, it feels comfortable again. So, yeah.
Welcome to SBS.
I can share that link later if somebody wants to see the whole thing. But Rylan, think about what the teachers missed out by making a decision based on an hour with Rylan. So the two stories I shared with you happened within the last 10 years. I'm going to give you a brief, super brief overview of the history of inclusive education, because this does impact our thinking and where we are now. So starting with thinking about institutions or exclusion, families had their kids, if you had a kid born with a disability, families were institutionalizing family members with significant disabilities. And that was the norm for quite some time. But between 1967 and 1988, the number of persons living in state institutions dropped by more than half. That was 1967 to 1988. Well, then there was this realization that people with disabilities deserve an education and a living space, so the government created separate systems. And this in itself wasn't a bad thing. However, as our culture and views on disabilities is changing, the government has not necessarily kept up. In 1975, US Congress mandated what was called free and appropriate education for all students with disabilities through the Education for All Handicapped Children Act. And then in 1990, the amendments to the law were passed, effectively changing this to what some of you may know as called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. What that means is that all children needed to be provided an education that was free appropriate, timely, non-discriminatory, meaningful, measurable, and within the least restrictive environment. So for a while there were institutions, and then you went to separate schools, so segregation. Well, with what was called the least restrictive environment, that led to mainstreaming. So mainstreaming or integration, that was like a school within a school or a program within a school where the home of, like if you had a disability, you would show up at the school, but your home is the special education classroom. The students, they went to special education classrooms, and then they could join a class, a general ed class, if they had the skills to participate. So they needed to hit this certain measure in order to participate. There was lots of negotiating with teachers, like, hey, you know, I'll take your lunch hour if you'll take Johnny in for math class. You know, he can sit there. And kids were more visitors. So if they could handle it, they would go visit a general ed classroom. The key here is that students belong to the special education classroom with students who had similar needs, and they could join the general ed if they could handle it. In the All Belongs history, we were called Christian Learning Center, but in 1979, think about it, 1979, Christian Learning Center was formed by a group of parents in response to the closing down of what was called the Pine Rest Children's Retreat. So parents who were in this separate school or institution then, parents desired Christian education for their children with disabilities. So it began as a segregated, self-contained school committed to providing special education, Christian special education. So they shared a campus with Grand Rapids Christian Schools. Students shared recess, lunch breaks, they worshiped together, but it was definitely a separate program. In 1985, our executive director at the time, Bear Behrens, he heard about inclusive education and explored the concepts behind it. In 1989 was when the Christian Learning Center launched the first inclusive education program over at Zeeland Christian School in West Michigan. They expected 10 students and ended up enrolling 18. The vision was to see students with disabilities as welcomed, embraced, and valued members of their neighborhood Christian school. At this point, parents were paying for both the Zeeland Christian, so the school, and Christian Learning Center. So if you had a child with a disability, you were almost paying double tuition. So in 1996, the school year of 96-97, that was when tuition equity was established with all the schools who were all the inclusive schools that Christian Learning Center, now All Belong, was working with. And this was a huge deal because what that meant is school communities were saying, first of all, we want to be diverse. We need to have all the children of a family here. We want this. And we don't feel like if some should pay more than others. If you have a child with a disability, you shouldn't be paying more because of who God created that child to be. So tuition equity was a huge deal in 1996. So when I say that we have moved to inclusion, today All Belong partners with over 70 schools in 8 states and has worked with hundreds of churches and faith-based communities across the country. There are 2 concepts that we embrace when we think about inclusion, and that's ownership and friendship. So ownership goes hand in hand with a sense of belonging. students with disabilities are owned or belong to the general education domain. So think about that. That's different than the mainstreaming. They are placed on the class list. They have a locker, a hook for their backpack, their coats right alongside their peers. Their primary teacher is the general education teacher. The special educator, or what we sometimes call the ESS teacher, Educational Support Services, is viewed as the case manager or the support person. They're the bridge. They are there to support the teacher and to help equip the student, the environment, the peers with everything they need to be fully engaged in the classroom. Inclusion, teaching all students, requires a team. So collaboration is critical, which is why the picture is of a bunch of teachers, because for a school to be truly inclusive, you have to have collaboration. Classroom teachers, they build the classroom community, the routines, the expectations. They know students really well. So a second grade teacher knows everything there is about second grade kids in second grade, or a middle school science, or whatever it is they teach. They know kids. The ESS teacher or the special ed teacher, with the help of paraprofessional, they come alongside with their unique set of skills, and together the team can plan and provide the support services necessary for kids to be successful. So just to give you an example of what this looks like, I was the ESS teacher in a K-8 school for 15 years. And when I was outside at recess, and one of the girls who I spend a lot of time with, she had pretty significant support needs. And so she did get a lot of support. She fell down and she was hurt. So of course I'm thinking, all right, I'm right here. I'll help you out. So I was walking towards her, and she got up and she ran right by me into the arms of the general education teacher. And I kind of felt like, oh, come on, I thought I was your person. But really, that is inclusion, because I'm there to support. If the other teacher wasn't there, I'm there to support. But who did that student really feel like they belonged? Like, I'm hurt, I need to go to my teacher. And that is huge. That ownership is definitely a huge piece of it. The second concept is friendship. There is an intentional focus on building community and genuine relationships. This peer support may be organized, like a lunch bunch or a social group, or a circle of friends or sidekicks, or whatever it is you want to call it. But the important thing is it's intentional focus on social inclusion. And this often contributes to the student's sense of belonging, their functioning, their engagement in class. And we know as kids get older that the intentional focus on relationship will help keep relationships outside of school. So ownership and friendship. A broad definition then is for families who desire a Christ-centered education. We wrap support and services around each student. Our desire is to know students most excellently and to adjust to their unique learning. So I want you to look at or to listen when I say we wrap support and services around each student. So when we talk about being an inclusive school, we talk about meeting kids where they're at. We talk about this is for a student who may have an intellectual disability. This is for a student who may be academically talented in math class and needs some extra support in math to have some extension activities. This might mean the kid who has ADHD or a hearing impairment. We wrap support and services around all students, which is why we need collaboration. Specifically for those with moderate to significant support needs, we call it a place of belonging in the general education classroom, supported by individualized goals and relationships. So for all students. I wanted to share a couple definitions from teachers because I think that we can have all of our lingo, but they have the best definitions. So this teacher says, not a visitor, but a resident with full rights. This teacher says, same place, same time, same activity, but possibly different goals. Uniquely ordinary. That inclusion is unique, but it should be ordinary. And that individuals and their needs are unique, but also ordinary. Celebrating strengths and embracing challenges together. And then it's not what's easy, it's what's right. I would say that is true. It's not what's easy, it's what's right. It's a journey. I was talking to an administrator last week and he said, you know, I tell parents and I tell teachers that we're not going to know everything. There's going to be some unexpected things happening. But what we can always expect, he said, is that I will be there, that the support staff will be there, and that we'll listen and that we'll do this together. So it's not what's easy, but it's what's right. So we think about, we want all students to feel included. But more than that, our desire is for all students to feel like they belong. Yeah, how do you know if people in your community feel like they belong? Well, Dr. Eric Carter from Vanderbilt University interviewed over 500 individuals with disabilities and their families in an effort to define belonging. And out of his research came the 10 dimensions of belonging. How do you know belonging is being felt in all members of community? Thinking about these 10 dimensions. Now, I could spend hours on each one of these dimensions, but I wasn't given that time, nor do you want me to take it. So I'm going to just highlight about 5 or 6 of them. So the first one is present. Okay, so 10 dimensions of belonging, present in all aspects of community. 19% of any community has a disability. What means 1 in 5 people have a disability. So this includes visual or hearing disability, ADHD, mental health, a learning disability. 1 in 5, about 3% of the 19% may have autism or Down syndrome or an intellectual disability. But if you think about it, 19%, what does that look like in your school community? Presence is not just sharing a same place, it's having a presence. When someone has a presence, you miss them when they're not there. When someone has a presence, you ache by their absence. So what does that look like? Do we have, what does our community look like with students? And I'll go with adults, because this isn't just a school, this is the population. Invited. This is a personal invite, sought out, pursued, intentional. When we are not intentional, people are left out. Think about the difference of joining a group or being invited to join a group. The difference of saying, hey, can I sit here? Oh, sure, no problem. Or, hey, come over here and sit by us. So invited. Another dimension of belonging is welcome. And the person determines what is welcoming. It's how they feel in community. When we don't know what to say, we usually don't say anything. So uncertainty leads to avoidance. You don't need to be a disability expert to welcome people. Ordinary gestures work. Greet people when they arrive, draw them into conversation, ask to eat lunch with them, notice they are there and notice when they're not there and tell them you missed them. That is a welcome. In the school community, information for parents, for teachers, for students is key to helping people feel like they belong, because we need to know how to welcome somebody. So I had a student, high school actually, came up to me and said, Mrs. Tubergen, we really want to talk with George, but we always ask him questions right after on Mondays, and we just don't ever get an answer from him. And so they were trying to engage, yet they needed more information. So I said to them, if you ask questions, he probably won't answer you. But if you say, hey, George, the weather was so nice out, and make a statement, he loves the weather, he'll start talking about it. Or notice something, say, looks like you have a red hat on, you must like hockey, he'll start talking about it. So they just needed a little guidance to know how to help this peer feel welcomed. So information is key. Another dimension of belonging is known. Not known about, but truly known. Not known by a label or a disability or the struggle, but known by the name, the interest, and who you are as a person. How we invest in knowing somebody matters. It gives a message. And with a strength-based perspective, telling somebody that you're indispensable, that is key. This is why I'm a huge advocate for Circle of Friends and pouring into relationship. An inclusive school pours into intentional relationship so that we can build a community of belonging. I had a parent of an 8th grade student say, this school was great. It really was great. The teachers were wonderful. The parents were wonderful. Everybody was so nice to my son. And there was something missing though. And so after about 5 minutes, we just kept talking, and she finally revealed that everybody was so nice, but she really wondered if anybody truly knew her son, knew his likes. He had never been invited over to anybody's house. And so at the depth of that belonging. So what is it like to really know somebody? Not know about them, but truly know them. Belonging, another dimension, is accepted. When you are personally known and embraced for who you are accepted. Fitting in means changing who you are. Fitting in may mean changing who God created you to be in order to go with the norm. But belonging is, this is who I am. My strengths, my challenges, that personal investment into someone's life is how we change views and hearts. It's not programs. It's really leaning into people's lives. And then befriended. So true belonging, we are all made for relationship, to be known, accepted for who we are, loved, missed when we're gone. Befriended is huge. And many students with disabilities, they may have close family friends, and then they might belong to a lot of groups. But as far as the acquaintances and that good peer group, that's where leaning into building intentional social inclusion is important. So why building a community of belonging? It's important for so many reasons, but we have future neighbors, future church members, future business owners, future government officials. And their view of disability and including students, including peers, including communities of varied abilities, this is our future. And so it's really exciting to think about a school, elementary school, that is saying, you know what, we want to have a diverse population here, and we want to be inclusive. So what does that look like? Where do we get started? I'm going to, we're going to plant our feet. So we're going to find a place to begin to plant our feet, to think, okay, this is great, but how do we even start thinking about this? To do that, we look at scripture. Psalm 139, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I will praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. If you think about your school community and the students who are enrolled and those who have passed through the doors over the years, I suspect you already have a very diverse community. At All Belong, we like to think that pink and green yarn were used in that knitting process. Let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean by that is that we all have, if we have pink and green yarn that God used to knit us all together, we all have green. Green are for those areas that are really easy for us. They're for our strengths. They are our gifts. So one of my green spots is my interest and ability in taking in information through books. I love to read. I love to research. I have a stack of books on my nightstand. I might be reading 2 or 3 or 4 of them at a time. I seldom finish any, which, okay, we'll go to what my difficulties and challenges are. But my strength is searching for information and reading about it. Think about one of your strengths right now. We all have them. Okay, and that's the green. And then we have the pink. What should we say? It's our hotspot, our challenges, things that are more difficult for us. So I love books, but language, vocabulary, multiple meanings of words are extremely difficult for me. I use a thesaurus all the time when I write. When I'm reading, I'm constantly asking my husband, hey, what does this mean? Or define this. He loves that, by the way, and not really. So I take in all of this information. I'm great at talking about it, but a challenge of mine, it would be writing a wonderfully scripted blog post. Okay, that would be challenging for me. We all have strengths. We all have things that we're good at, and then we all have things that are more difficult. Would you agree that everyone gathered here on this Zoom call, that we could actually wear this like our name tag? With our name in the middle, we could fill it in with things that are easy and things that are difficult, strengths that are green, and then hot spots that are pink. It's a complex knitting pattern that God uses for each one of us. We can be green and pink in so many different areas, but the truth is that it's all of us, that our personal strengths impact the way we do life, the way we live, the way that our kids do school. I want to tell you some lessons that we've learned about from the puzzle piece perspective, because we think these are really important. Have you ever noticed how many times a person with a disability is viewed as an all pink person? Oh, it's Down syndrome Johnny, it's Tourette syndrome Kim, it's ADHD Aaron. And it's like that defines the person. But you know what? It's not a biblical viewpoint. Scripture is very clear that God has given everyone gifts to bring to the body to build it up. Well, if there's not an all pink, what about green? I would rather handed in my green and pink puzzle piece and exchanged it for a full green one. Anyone want to trade in? I'm sure you can think of what you would like to trade in right now. But if we did that, we wouldn't need each other. There are no all pink and there are no all green. That's not biblical either. Because you know what? We are beautifully hand knit by God, each one of us fearfully and wonderfully made. And we are created to live in community. We need each other. Favorite verse from 1 Corinthians 12, where God designed us so we could need each other to fit together. That's what puzzles are. So when we are put together in community, we're whole. each member of that body being vital to that community as it functions. So where I'm strong, I can come alongside someone else who is weak, and where they're strong, they can come alongside me. So we fit together like a puzzle in the body of Christ. Think about the community of believers in your school. When we talk about inclusive education or inclusive school, it's really tempting to think about that kid. Or are we doing this for that student? Or, oh yeah, I know the kid that gets that extra support. The truth is, when we talk about an inclusive school, we're talking about all of us, because we all have strengths, we all have some challenges, and we need each other to fit. Accept one another then, just as Christ accepted you, in order to bring praise to God. When we love people as they are, not only are we loving the person God has created them to be, but we're also bringing praises in heaven. In inclusive education, the circles of our progressing communities are still present today. There's still exclusion, segregation. There's still integration, inclusion, and we are striving for belonging. Each one of us are striving for belonging. Those 10 dimensions, it's not just for students who we're talking about, it's for all of us. All communities are on a journey towards belonging, a diverse group sharing life in one community. So diverse, but all equally worthy. Not being present, but having a presence. Not sharing a space, but sharing lives. And not making room for individuals with varied abilities, but aching for their absence when they're not around. And this picture that's on the screen right now, we show that to kids. And I have actually had a couple kids cry because they say, I feel so sad for that person who's not there. They're already putting that into place. Or think about it this way, our community is incomplete if the student is not there. We are the body. This is just a picture of a school where every year the kids figure out what their strengths and what their struggles are, and then they put that together. And so some of our response to having an inclusive school and to realizing that we all have strengths and we all have struggles, we use person-first language. And so there are two different ways to talk about disability. We stress putting identity first because it shows more of our similarities than our differences. So it's not the boy, it's not Down syndrome Johnny. It's, hey, that's Johnny over there. Hey, Johnny loves, he loves his brothers. He is super flexible. He can take the bottom of his foot and put it up to his ear like a telephone because he's just super flexible. And you know what? He happens to have Down syndrome. Let me tell you what that means for Johnny. So in inclusive school, we use person-first language, and we are all part of an inclusive school. And equity, this is one thing that can be really difficult to understand, and I just love this visual here. It shows that in order to be equal, it's not that we all get the same things. Equity occurs when every student gets what he or she needs. And so that picture on the right shows what each of those kids needed in order to see over the fence. Now, if we can't take down the fence as the barrier, okay, because the fence is there, what would be best if we could take the barrier away? Because there's a fence, you see, they each have what they need in order to watch the game. So in the classroom, that's something that, you know, teachers work really hard at, working with students to help them understand that equal doesn't mean we're all going to get the exact same thing. What it does mean is that we're going to get to know each student in the class and help kids get to know each other, and then we're going to give them what they need. How am I doing on time here? I had one more video that I wanted to show you, but I see that it is not here. Oh wait, maybe it is. All right, one more video, and see, this is Ruby, who is in an inclusive school in Grand Rapids.
Everything about Ruby's diagnosis is challenging. Every year has been a struggle and a negotiation and an unknowing. I just wanted her to be in a school where the bell rang and they all ran out to recess and then they all came in. Our big problem is that Ruby's never been invited into those types of environments.
Ruby was born premature at 24 weeks, and as a result of her prematurity, she has cerebral palsy. When her body tries to do something, her muscles overfire. So she is 100% dependent for all physical mobility and physical needs. She needs a lot of help.
So we drive when Ruby's about a year to University of Michigan to a neurologist, and this guy walks into this meeting and he says to Jody and I, your daughter will never walk, she'll never talk, and you're going to lose all your friends. Well, project forward, and she never walked, she never talked, and we sit here because we got new friends. The one thing that we see in this school with LSA is they didn't say no. And they didn't say no to the ramps. They didn't say no to recess. They didn't say no. And the most common response is, whoa, that's a problem. I don't know if we can do that. It's the rare side that they say, how can we help you make it work? Just that attitude is something that is different for us.
The love comes first and everything else just gets figured out. The feeling that I have when she's here, it's really easy, is the best way to describe it. It's very normal and it's natural, and it's just how God designed us to interact with each other. It's not complicated. I think one thing I notice about Ruby's classmates is they pick up on her subtleties. They'll watch her hand for a movement, or they'll look at her to see if she'll smile or if her body might tighten up.
They talk to Ruby as though Ruby is ready to talk back. And to me, that is the greatest inclusive aspect of the school.
With or without disabilities, she's part of that class. She just gleams with excitement. She loves being here.
Our start with Ruby going to see these neurologists when she was a year old, it was always negative. There was never anything that was joyful about it. This has been like this incredible ease. You know, the ramps aren't just for Ruby. It's going to help pave the way. But there's a little kid behind Ruby in a couple years that's going to benefit from the school's interest to be more inclusive.
I just say inside, amen. It truly is a place where there's radical inclusion.
Radical inclusion. Think about my conversation with Abby and Michael, you know, and just talked about how it is radical, and we need to be creative, and we need to, you know, come together as a community and start with common language and really understand not only the mindset, but also then the how do we do this. And hopefully this little overview, maybe it connected the dots of maybe some of the why you see some of the things that are happening at ASA, but it also might have brought more questions. So I think now, well, after Abby and Michael, you tell me if you want to do this, but going into some small groups and just talk with those in your group. We're going to just do it randomly. You can click on your camera if you want to, or keep it off. But just talk about maybe if you want to be super vulnerable, where are you on the journey? Where are you on this journey? What does belonging look like at ASA? And then any questions that you have. Does that sound good, Abby and Michael? And then let's see, what time is it? Maybe 20 minutes and then we'll come back. All right.
And I can, Becky, I can kind of give some brief instructions. Hello, ASA. My name is Matt Cook. I work with Becky at All Belong, and I'm in charge of the breakout rooms tonight. So if you've never done this before, I'm going to push a button. Theoretically, you're all going to go to the breakout rooms that we've randomly assigned to you. It's groups of 4 or 5 based on our numbers tonight. And if it doesn't work for whatever reason, if it kicks you off the Zoom call, just pop back on and we'll get you in the right place. And then when we're ready to bring everyone back together, I'll hit a button on my side of things and you'll have a countdown. You'll have about a minute to kind of wrap up your conversation. So just wanted to give you a heads up there. Cool. Anything else, Abby, Michael, or Becky? Okay.
I think that's good. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Well, have fun in your rooms. All right.
You click off the recording.
And I think everybody's back, Becky. I think all the rooms are closed. So
Great. Nice to see faces instead of talking to blank screens. So yeah, welcome back. Hope you had some good discussion. Is there anybody who would like to share something from their group, something you talked about, something that really hit home, or a question? And if there is, just unmute it. So I'll start with you, Abby. What did your group talk about? Because you just said it was great conversation.
Thanks, Becky. I was excited to hear we had a good combination of teachers and parents who had some experiences to share and some really great questions. My favorite question right at the end was actually directed right to our teacher in the group, asking if she could speak to what teachers have access to and if they feel supported, and how doing this work has felt for them from the classroom. So that was, I think, a really insightful question from a parent, and a great thing to be able to hear a teacher be able to share.
Yeah, it is. Did the teacher have time to share that answer or not?
She had that last 60 seconds and I thought did really well with it. Yep.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, can you share the theme of that? If you don't want to put teacher on, I just don't know anybody. So if you don't want to put them out, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So do you just want to like summarize?
I can summarize unless Rose wants to unmute.
I can unmute. Yeah, so this is my second year at All Saints teaching kindergarten, and I have felt very supported with concerns coming up in the classroom. I can go to anyone in my hallway or in the office and administrative staff, and they are more than willing to help any way they can. So I think that's really helpful with some of the unknowns too that come up throughout the year.
Awesome. And it just shows that collaboration in an inclusive school, it's about, where all kids are our kids. And so one of the hardest things when I go into a school, and this is new, it's teachers who are used to teaching with the door closed and with nobody coming in. I mean, right? It's just very segregated like that. But yeah, that collaboration is awesome. Michael, what did your, how about your group? Any themes that came out of it or questions?
It was a good conversation. We commented kind of at the end how quickly it went. We talked a little bit about we had a couple parents, one parent who's been at ASA for quite some time, actually since the beginning, and then a parent whose oldest is in kindergarten, or I'm sorry, in first grade, and then also a teacher in the group as well. We talked a little bit about, because Lily's got a student in high school, just kind of how some of this inclusion work happened first in the elementary schools across the diocese. And now the high schools are starting to be a little bit more responsive to that. So when students come to us who might have a disability, we can say to them, this doesn't have to be just a K-8 thing, and then you're kind of on your own. We've been working pretty closely with the high schools, which has been really good.
Right.
And Lily commented, both, she's got a student at Catholic Central, but also knows someone who just recently graduated from West, who's both student support departments have been great in supporting their students. And then I ended up finishing with a comment, and I think it's good for everyone to hear, and that is when we've talked about doing this work, whether it's with All Belong or with Notre Dame, and talking about kind of the general conversation on inclusion, this isn't something that All Saints Academy is doing to become this special education magnet school. And we talked about just the fact that there's not enough resources in the world that if you just had a lot of special education students pour into your school, rather we're just trying to be prepared for anybody who is in our community, and kind of going back to your statistics about this 19% of any community, you're going to find disabilities. And so we just want to be prepared for anyone who comes to us and have that infrastructure. So that's what really prompted this journey that started back in 2017 with really trying to provide personnel and resources and materials and professional development. And now this is kind of this last piece, with, although we tried to schedule this 2 years ago and then last year with the pandemic and all that stuff, but kind of educating our parents, because it really takes, as you've talked about, a culture of inclusivity. So we're excited to kind of where we're at now. And Missy, who was also in our group, kind of just said, this is great to kind of know, because she wasn't really aware of a lot of the things that were happening behind the scenes, and to kind of know this has really been exciting for her.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, that magnet school, it's not the goal, right? Because then it's disproportionate anyway. And what's so important, what I've heard you say before, is you just want to serve families really well who want a Catholic education. It's not I'll just put it that way. So being prepared. Great. What would you say, I always like to ask, what are some of your current strengths, as a community at ASA? What are some strengths or some growth that you have already seen of building an inclusive community, a community of belonging? And then on the flip side of that, after we talk about just what are some strengths, what are some places we could grow? Can we be transparent and talk about, are there a couple places to grow? So what are some strengths? And it can just be a one sentence or one word. You don't have to elaborate.
Is that to me or to anybody?
It's to everybody, because I've heard great things about ASA. So it's to everybody. If you're a teacher or a parent, just what have you noticed?
Thought I'd make a comment coming from the ASA Mission Effectiveness Committee I recently joined. And I guess even though I don't feel an expertise on this area, and some of the strengths I feel from the community here, this is our way, it's our mission, and it's the way of the saints. So this is really for everybody, whether we're, and so I feel like our strength here is our mission and our faith, because our mission and our faith really, they don't give us the option. They demand that we have an inclusive educational environment, and that's our calling. And so this is the way the saints have showed us, and this is hopefully going to be that anchor that keeps us. Well, what is our goal? Well, is to follow the way of the saints. We're All Saints Academy, and so this is simply our way. And so
Beautifully said. It's simply our way. Perfect. Anybody else? Can be something
I
super
would say
practical.
a big strength of ASA community is the staff and the teachers. They're extremely kind and welcoming, all of them that we've come across. So we're very fortunate for them.
Great.
I would also like to chime in just to kind of echo that. Very responsive. I feel like everybody at ASA, every teacher, every staff member I've talked to about any kind of questions or concerns or comments has always been incredibly responsive and helpful.
Great.
Becky, can I throw 2 more in there for you?
Absolutely.
I'm never going to tire to sing the praises of the 8th grade class from this year. We're celebrating with a pizza party for them on Thursday because the growth that they've shown over their years at ASA has, from my perspective and from this perspective of the teachers, been phenomenal. And I think that speaks to the teachers, their parents, the kids themselves, and the team that supported them. And in our 5th grade classroom, we've been able to open our doors really wide and make some welcomes to some students that we haven't had with us prior to this year. So I would sing both of those praises really highly.
Yes, that's great. I think of what you said about the growth, it doesn't matter always. We begin at different places, and kids too. They begin at different places of their attitudes towards others, their understanding. And but that growth is the most important, and we call it a journey to inclusion, a journey to belonging. And then to open your doors to students who you wouldn't necessarily have had before. Just a reminder, right? It's not always going to be easy. We don't always know the answer. What makes you an inclusive school? What you just said. It's it's the way of the saints. It's it's who you are. And so it's not saying, nope, you don't belong here. It's how are we going to do this? Well, that didn't work. Now what will we try? It's the process that makes you an inclusive school. It's the process of how you think about things that come up. So an inclusion guru says it's over, under, around or through, you make a way or find a way. So being super flexible. All right, what about places to grow? What, because there's always a journey, you always have a place to go. So where are some places that you think ASA could grow?
Hi, Becky. You mentioned collaboration before, and I wanted to shout out a strength there. I think we're really blessed to have a team that does collaborate and an administration that really encourages and helps us find time to collaborate when we need it. On the flip side, it's also a growth area. Just the more inclusive we become, the more resources we need to find, and the more we need to collaborate. So it's a good growth to have, and we're definitely beginning it. I shouldn't say beginning it. We've always had it, but with more inclusivity, we're finding creative ways to meet that need. But you can always have more. So
absolutely. Great, thank you. What
I
else?
think even a place to, oh, sorry, was someone going? Sometimes I think when you're focusing on one thing, it's like a pendulum. So we've really been focusing on things like RTI and becoming inclusive and trying to reach students, who are kind of at these bottom quartiles. And when you focus that much attention, sometimes you can tend to forget about the students who might be really advanced or excelled, or even sometimes in the middle. So I think just making sure that we're not forgetting about those students and not, kind of leaving them on an island, and making sure we're truly meeting the needs of all learners, not just all learners because they're exceptional on the lower end, but remembering that we've got students who are exceptional on the other ends as well. And I think that just kind of keeping that in the back of our mind is helpful. But I don't ever want to feel like we're so focused on students who need the extra help that we're leaving the other students out, because we've got students with all abilities in every classes, even within own families. A student might do really well in one area, and then another student even in the same household who might struggle, and to put all that effort and energy and resources into just one side, we want to make sure that we continue to reach all students. So I know that has sometimes can be the feeling, and I think when we're focusing that much, it can be difficult always to reach all those students, but as long as we're keeping that in the front of our minds, I think it will be helpful to make sure that we're not leaving those students behind either.
Sure. Thanks for mentioning that. A truly inclusive school does serve all students. And then you think about learning is elevated for all students in a truly inclusive school, because we need to be intentional with all kids. So I think sometimes what can happen is you work so hard at trying to get some of those initial resources and processes and things into place for kids who normally haven't been within your building. And so, yeah, a lot of energy, emotional energy, brain power, but also financial can go into that. But you have a foundation. And so thinking about that multi-tiered system and all students, definitely keep that at the forefront. Anything else that you can think of, places to grow?
You can just say hi.
Hi.
Okay, so fifth grade, I
Hello.
have noticed in fifth grade and eighth grade of everything we're talking about, and I did not realize that it was this intentional. As it has been. I thought we just had really great teachers and students, and so, but also I work at Mary Free Bed, where I work with physically disabled kids, and to know that we are making a conscious effort to include everyone just makes my heart so happy. So that's all I had to wanted to say for tonight, but yeah, this is really awesome. That's it.
Well, and a shout out to the teachers. I mean, just didn't know it was that intentional. This kind of thought, this just kind of
I thought you
went
guys
off.
would-
It's how we, yeah. But it says something, thinking we have a good sized group here, but it's a very small compared to your full, right? All of your constituents and student body. And so just thinking about how do we get the word out that this is intentional. I have some ideas, and I know Megan, your teacher consultant, does too. Anybody else? I know enough to not go over 8 o'clock, and if we even can get done a couple minutes early, that's a good thing. But I don't want to keep anybody from saying any last comments. Anybody? Well, thank you for taking the time. It just shows your investment. Thank you, Michael and Abby, for organizing this and for inviting All Belong to be a part of it. And if we can come back and do a in-person sometime, same thing, but just maybe more discussion and with a larger group, we can do that too.
And thanks to Becky and Matt from All Belong and taking time out of their night tonight. Before we started letting people into the room, they asked, how many people to expect, and I said I'd be thrilled. I think if we got over 10 or 15 or something like that, and we eclipsed that by quite a bit, and to have so many teachers come who've heard this stuff already, just shows the dedication of our staff, and of course to the parents of ASA who they don't get any better than this group. So I appreciate everyone coming out tonight and learning a little bit of something.
Excellent. All right. Abby, anything or just goodbye?
Thank you all. I'm going to try to do the first step of sharing a little bit more with everybody in a blog in the next couple of weeks. So feel free to share that when it comes out if you have interest or ways to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks all.